Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Just how close did the country come to crippling its economy thanks to a couple of rail barons? Thanks to our billionaires in the ivory towers and in the penthouses of corporate America. How close did we come? Now, they're saying the strike is averted. There's a cooling off period, all that stuff. I'm not 100% sure that the vote is the tentative agreement becomes the final agreement. The workers are going, hey, I don't know. I don't know that this is enough. And I'll tell you, I don't think they're wrong, especially when you look at the fact that I keep coming back to how close we've gotten to a crippled economy because of a handful of rail barons. Now, I know our corporate-controlled for-profit media is, pointing at those workers who wouldn't take the crappy conditions, who came out of the pandemic and said, no, we should be the essential frontline heroes that we were told. We should have dignity, respect. Maybe we get to see our kids every once in a while. Maybe we don't want to work. Maybe we don't want to live to work. Maybe we want to make sure that the jobs that we have supports our families and that we have good quality of life, work balance, maybe some of that. Now, I look at the fact that the statement, and this is amazing to me, and this is what I've just been fixated on all day. And if you're a working person, you should be thinking about this in every employment situation out there, because this is the boardroom mentality. They spoke the quiet part out loud, which is happening a lot lately. But the executives, they had their statement that said that, because look, I've been beating them up. Others have been beating up over the fact that they have, skyrocketing profits, the kind of money that's just obscene when you're talking about, crying poverty to your workforce. In fact, the five largest CEOs, the five largest rail companies, these big conglomerates, they had in the last 3 years $200 million in compensation for their top guy, the person sitting in the ivory tower looking down on the rest of us. They spent, I hope you're sitting down for this, these companies spent nearly $200 billion with a B, $200 billion on stock buybacks and dividends over the last decade plus. $200 billion. And yet they were saying, hey, we really can't afford you to have a weekend. We really can't afford you to be able to make a doctor's appointment, sorry, we can't afford. Our business model doesn't allow for you to see your children or, go to their soccer games or go to parent-teacher conferences, or sorry, can't have that because we need more. Now, what's interesting is Warren Buffett in his annual letter, was effusive with praise for the rail company that he's in control of. This BNSF, which interestingly enough, they're probably one of the more difficult ones to deal with, turning away loads and losing stuff a lot. But he points out in his letter, your railroad has record earnings of $6 billion in 2021. Here it should be noted, he writes, we are talking about the old-fashioned sort of earnings that we favor, a figure calculated after interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization, and all forms of compensation. That means we gave our CEOs enough, but we cheated our workforce out of enough so that we could profit more. This is the right way, the old-fashioned way. And I started thinking about this going, yeah, this is the old-fashioned way. This is the robber baron way. This is the 100 years ago way of, sun up to sundown, work days, 6-7 days a week, poverty, desperation wages. Yeah, this is the old-fashioned way that we as working people should be going, bad. Now understand, all these profits have been off the backs of working people. They point out that in 1983, there were 427,000 rail employees in this country. Now we're down to less than 200,000. Where'd those wage gains go? Oh yeah, to the CEOs and to the shareholders. The reason I bring this up, and I think this is the important part, this is the punchline if you needed the punchline. They're saying that all of the things that I just laid out, the massive number of stock buybacks, admitting that they don't know what to do with all the money that they're making, so they're just buying back stocks and making shareholders wealthier and themselves. The justification for these high CEO salaries and the justification for all of this just obscene kind of greed is, because they did it on their own. They took on risk. They did the right thing. They did, however, say that the skyrocketing profits, nothing to do with any. Here's the quote. Nothing to do with, quote, any contributions by labor. They were able to take on all this wealth. They were able to gain all of this wealth with no help from workers. Is that tone deaf? Is that fanciful thinking? Or is it just the robber baron mentality that you workers are what's standing in the way of our making more money, as opposed to, hey, thanks for going and doing those dangerous jobs. Hey, thanks for doing the actual work that we're profiting off of. And as working people, we should be kind of taking this message and going, that's not right. In fact, it's flat wrong. And this is, again, another one of those moments where they said the quiet part out loud. This is the kind of stuff they've been saying to each other in their smoke-filled backroom board meetings for decades. This isn't new. They said it out loud now. And this is another one of those moments when someone tells you who they are, believe them. Not that I ever had any visions of or any delusions whatsoever that they were anything other than greedmongers willing to throw your children under the railroad for another penny. But this is where we should be pushing out. Now, they said, look, the companies maintain that capital investments and risk, that's the reason that they're making all this money. None of that labor stuff. Let that sink in. Just absorb the arrogance of that. And then think about these CEOs who, like this Keith Creel, CEO of Canadian Pacific Railroad, $26 million in compensation in 2021. His pay went up 58% in 1 year. James Foote, the CEO of CSX, $16.6 million. Union Pacific CEO, 14.5 plus. Stock options, all that stuff that comes with it. Norfolk Southern, 14 million, 140 times that of what the average worker makes. Just obscene amounts. And you go, but Rick, they do a lot of hard work. No. And here's the thing, and this is where my mind is going in this spot, where I'm hoping that working people are looking at the great divide. And as I've been saying, we got to stop looking at things through the frame of everything's right, left, Democrat, Republican, red hat, blue hat, red pill, blue pill. We got to stop thinking about that and start looking at it as top down. When these folks who are making millions of dollars a year are looking at us and going, you didn't do any of this. We did it. That's a problem. And the solution is lots of workers going on strike. And look, I'm still not 100% sure that the railroad workers aren't going to vote this down and be on the picket line at some point. Give credit where credit is due. Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, they're the ones who staved off this strike for this moment. But we're going to see. Now look at September. So far in September, where there are more workers on strike right now than there have been in as long as I can remember. In the first 6 months of this year, there were 180 strikes that involved 78,000 workers. That's up from the first half of last year of 102 strikes and 26,000 workers. Now you go, that's a big increase, and it is, and it's going to get more so, because I just saw a story out of Columbus, Ohio, that the Kroger workers, nearly 13,000 of them have authorized a strike. Why? Better wages, hours, conditions. Dignity and respect as well. And I argue dignity and respect are part of the wage package. If you're not able to support your family, if you're not able to put food on the table, how do you have that dignity and respect? And the thing is what gets me is, again, Kroger is a very profitable company. And sorry, we're not going to give out raises. No raises for you. Here's the part I love. Instead of raises, and I love this, man. Again, the arrogance. We're gonna do financial counseling, so that minimum wage job you got, we're gonna help you figure out, how to make it stretch a little bit longer. Maybe figuring out how to buy dented canned soup at the grocery store. That kind of financial help you be poor. And I love that frame, because in the Pennsylvania General Assembly a number of years ago, and I mocked this for a while, they did the hour-long play poor game, where they had to have like bus tickets and they had to have $1 and figure out how to spend it. I love when rich people try and play poor, because they're no good at it. And what they found out, the Republicans who played the game here found out they couldn't be poor, so they decided not to be, which is nice if you can make that decision. But if you were me growing up as a kid, that wasn't a choice. Which again is why workers are saying we've had enough. And in fact, in Buffalo, there are 6,300 healthcare workers who have authorized a strike. So we could be seeing a lot of this. And you go, but Rick, that's not everybody's a member of a union. And you go, right, but they should be, because they could strike. What's happening instead of workers going on strike in bigger numbers is they're leaving jobs. They're quitting. And you've heard it, the Great Resignation. The folks over at Wallet Hub did a study that just grabbed my attention today. They pointed out, and I love this, that the states that have the highest quit rates, the workers who are quitting the most, are in states that, and anybody who listens to me knows this already, the answer is going to be here. The 10 states, 9 of those 10 states are no rights at work states. Georgia, Kentucky, Tennessee, Arizona, Wyoming, Montana, West Virginia, South Carolina. Alaska's in there because they got a lot of jobs going on. And Louisiana, 9 of the 10 of them are no rights at work states. Now, conversely, on the flip side of this, the states that have the lowest quit rates, you know the answer. They're right to bargain states. They're states that workers have the right to organize, have the right to ensure that people who benefit from having a union are contributing to help make that union strong. All states that have that right to bargain. The state with the least quit rate, New York, followed by District of Columbia, followed by Pennsylvania. Again, high unionization rates in the private sector. New Jersey, Minnesota, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Illinois, Washington State, and California. Those are your states that have more stability in the workplace. And now this is one of those things for employers who are concerned about constant turnover, like the railroads having. Tons of turnover. If you want a stable, steady workplace, if you want people to come and make careers and do hard work and be invested in your company, maybe bargain with them. Maybe give them the dignity and respect of a reasonable wage and health security and retirement security. Partner with them and help them understand that they're not the cost for you, but they're actually the reason that you are making money. Maybe if we flip that frame a little bit, maybe the Great Resignation would be, stopping. That is my thought for the day. And I'll tell you, the fact that you've got these CEOs so arrogant to say, no, those workers, they didn't do this. We did it. Quite remarkable. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com, or give us a yell, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. I guess that's the question. Are you essential? Are you not? Did you help create those profits? And are you offended by the fact that, the boss doesn't think so? Love to hear your thoughts. Right back after this. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments. and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, email me, rick at thericksmithshow.com. So John sent me an email that caught my attention. He points out that while Governors Abbott, DeSantis, and Ducey may have sovereign immunity, the transportation people do not. Moving undocumented immigrants without federal permission and the permission of destination sites and jurisdictions may be criminal. He points out that the receiving jurisdictions may choose to arrest the bus driver or air crews or seize the boat, bus, or planes used. It doesn't matter, he says, whether an organized crime boss or a state official paid for the people trafficking. But here's the thing, and this is where Trump world doesn't care. The criming and the cruelty is the point. If people get harmed, the collateral damage, they don't care about you. They don't care about anyone. And what I find interesting is Democrats are, seething, was the headline, seething over the political stunt of taking these poor people seeking asylum and then using them in this way, basically human trafficking them somewhere, promising them they're going to get jobs and all this stuff, only to dump them. And, I go, that's the point. The point is the cruelty. And this is where folks on the left have to understand. The mindset of the conservative movement in this moment is the cruelty is the point. That's it. Marianne sent me an email and with a Bible verse in it. And it's Leviticus 19:33. It says, when a stranger sojourns with you in your land, you shall not do him wrong. You shall treat the stranger who sojourns with you as a native among you, and you shall love him as yourself. For you were strangers in the land of Egypt, so says God. And yet the Christian nation folk, the folks who want us to believe that, no, we're Christian nation, they seem to miss this. They seem to miss the fact that what they claim to believe in, what they believe is this part of it, they don't even understand. It's kind of scary stuff. Let's quick go to the phones. We got Cal on line 1. Cal, how we doing?
Not quick enough. Did you give, out of all those statistics at the start, did you give the 5 railroad companies, CEOs, 10 years pay?
No, I just gave 1 year. I didn't give them the 10 year. I gave the 1 year. The Canadian Pacific guy made $26 million. CSX guy made $16.6. Union Pacific, he pocketed about $14.5 million. Norfolk Southern about $14 million. I'm sure over a decade those numbers are 10 times that.
Yes. So 1 year for the railroad companies, CEOs pay. Hello?
Yeah, 1 year for Keith Krell is his name. He's the CEO of Canadian Pacific Railroad.
Yeah,
he
no, that I've got. Did you give anything about 10-year railroad companies, CEOs?
I didn't give a 10-year, no. That's 1 year. 1 year.
Yes, right.
$16 million. or 1 year with that guy, $26 million. Now, you could extrapolate that over 10 years to probably be in excess of $200 million.
Right.
So I think folks can do that. Not to mention the fact that, as I said, the railroad industry for just last year, their profit was just outrageous. In fact, over the last 10 years, they've done $200 billion in stock buybacks. I mean, this is the kind of thing that people have to understand.
$1 billion in stock buybacks.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
some of this might end up on one of my posters for next Saturday and Sunday.
There you go. Good stuff, Cal. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you, Rick.
Yep. You have a good night. No, I mean, the greed is just outrageous. And the numbers, while, you go, do the numbers really matter? Yeah. A $200 billion in stock buybacks, that's the rail company going, we don't have anything more productive to do with this money. We can't invest in more cars. We can't invest in more workers. We're just going to divvy it up amongst ourselves. Now, the weird thing is you look at BNSF, one of the Warren Buffett Railroad. This was amazing to me. Their failure rate, they have seen a 546% increase in unfulfilled freight orders, which means a 546% jump in you not getting the stuff that you need. Now, remember, we keep hearing this is all Joe Biden's fault. All this is Joe Biden's fault. Inflation's Joe Biden's fault. Never mind the fact that the rest of the world is seeing massive inflations. It's only here. It's only Joe Biden. Gas prices are bad because of Joe Biden. Food prices are Joe Biden's fault. Everything's Joe Biden's fault. But the reality is the globe is going through a period like this. And a big part of it is the greed that is strangling our system. But we're not allowed to talk about that because, well, we got to focus on other things, like the migrant children and the migrants that, because that's really what this was. The stunt that DeSantis pulled, the stunt that Abbott's pulled, we're going to take poor people who are struggling for a better existence, we're going to put them on a plane, send them somewhere where those liberals are. And because they got what they wanted. They got liberals all upset. Oh, how can you do this? This is horrible, treating people this way. You go, yeah, that's the point. The cruelty is the point. Treating people horribly, that's the point. Because that's who these folks are, and this took me some time to finally come around to, because I like to believe that we're all decent, that we're all willing to reach out a hand, we're all willing to do something to make someone else's life better, because we know eventually it's going to make us all better off. No, that's not actually the truth, and that's a hard realization. So when I see someone like DeSantis or Trump or any of them doing the things that they do, especially on immigration, because they don't have any plans. Their plan is we're going to build a big wall. That, isn't going to work. So where's the legislation to move forward to deal with this issue other than political stunts? Now, I hope someone does go to jail over this. The fact that DeSantis had to go to, I guess, to Texas to find people to exploit. There's got to be some kind of criming in that. But again, breaking the law in public and then rubbing our nose in the fact that they're criming, that's the MO of MAGA world on steroids. So am I shocked? Not even a little bit. Quick break, right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2.
On this day in labor history, the year was 1945. That was the day oil workers walked off the job. The strike soon spread to 20 states and involved more than 43,000 workers at 22 oil companies. After years of wartime wage freezes, the union's demand was 52 for 40, 52 hours pay for 40 hours work. Workers demanded a 30% pay increase, shift differentials, and an eventual return to the 36-hour work week. The strike began in Michigan at the Saccone Vacuum Refinery in Trenton. From there, it spread to Gulf, Sinclair, and Shell. By October 4th, President Truman signed Executive Order 9639, allowing the Secretary of the Navy to seize petroleum operations. The Oil Workers International Union CIO immediately called off the strike and ordered its members back to work. A month later, the Navy had still not relinquished control of operations. The Union considered Truman's seizure a betrayal. There was no mechanism put in place to settle the dispute or consider workers' demands. By January 1946, the oil panel created by the Secretary of Labor finally awarded oil workers an 18% wage increase. Though disappointed, the union considered it a victory. They asserted the strike action was significant on a number of levels. The first nationwide industry strike had just forced the oil companies to meet with the union for the very first time. The OWI believed the groundwork for industry-wide bargaining had been finally established. It had been the first post-war strike and had forced the government to begin moving away from wartime wage controls. Of the post-war strikes, it won the largest pay increase. And importantly, it broke the power of Standard Oil to dictate wages to the industry through its dealings with its independent union.
For generations, workers have been punished by corporate bosses for watching the clock. But now, the corporate clock is watching workers, called digital productivity monitoring. This surveillance is done by an integrated computer system including a real-time clock, camera, keyboard tracker, and algorithms to provide a second-by-second record of what each employee is doing. Jeff Bezos, boss of Amazon, pioneered use of this ticking electronic eye in his monstrous warehouses, forcing hapless, low-paid pickers to sprint down cavernous stacks of consumer stuff to fill online orders pronto. Beat the clock or be fired. Terrific policy, exclaimed taskmasters at hospital chains, banks, tech giants, newspapers, colleges, and other outfits employing millions of mid-level professionals. So they've been installing these unblinking digital snoops to watch their employees, even timing their bathroom breaks and constantly eyeing each one's pace of work. They've plugged in new software with such Orwellian names as Work Smart and Time Doctor to count workers' keystrokes and to snap pictures every 10 minutes of workers' faces and screens, recording all on digital scoreboards. You are paid only for the minutes the computers, quote, see you in action. Bosses hail the electronic minders as Fitbits of productivity, spurring workers to keep noses to the grindstone and also to instill workplace honesty. Only the whole scheme is dishonest. No employee's worthiness can be measured in keystrokes and 10-minute snapshots. This is Jim Hightower saying employees call this digital management demoralizing, toxic, and just wrong. But corporate investors are pouring billions into it. Which group do you trust to shape America's workplace?
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I know everything's Joe Biden's fault. The inflation, the price of gas, beans. The reason the beans went up, Joe Biden's fault. It's all Joe Biden. Now, the weird thing is you don't hear anyone, really out there, except me, saying that, hey, we're reshoring manufacturing, investing in future technologies like the CHIPS bill, doing something on climate change. Yeah, Joe Biden's fault. Where's the giant statue? Where are the big cardboard cutouts with the finger and the where's that at? We had a bunch of idiots run around slapping Joe Biden did this all over things. How about let's talk about the things that he really did? And on the prescription drug front. Yeah, did something that they have not been able to do since George Bush boogered it up back in the early 2000s. But here to talk about, just how this is going to work, how it's going to help folks, and maybe reduce inflation a little bit. I've asked our good friend Laura Packard to come talk with us. She's the executive director of Healthcare Voter. You can check out their website. I think it's healthcarevoter.org. We'll get links out on social media to make sure you can check that out. But Laura, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me.
So everything's Joe Biden's fault except for the good things that happen, like, reshoring manufacturing and bringing down prescription drug prices and all. Everything else is Joe Biden's fault except for this.
Well, there was just a big celebration at the White House this week to celebrate the Inflation Reduction Act. So Joe Biden, Dark Brandon Joe Biden, has actually got some great accomplishments to talk about.
So this is like Dark Brandon, or because I still love I'm still trying to figure out how to use the "Let's Go Brandon" frame in a way that say, yeah, he did. He went and he's made things better.
Absolutely. And so some of the pieces in the Inflation Reduction Act, first of all, it's keeping your health insurance premiums low for the next 3 years if you have insurance through the Affordable Care Act. That was going to expire at the end of this year, and I talked about it a few times on your show. Well, that's fixed, at least for 3 years. And as you mentioned, now Medicare is going to be able to negotiate lower drug prices for people on Medicare. That's going to take a couple years to kick in, but sooner than that is a $2,000 out-of-pocket max for people on Part D prescription drugs. So that is going to be really big for so many people that have expensive medications.
No, it's huge. But you said 3 years that the ACA fix is going to be in place. I say we're at a crossroads moment because that 3 years. In 3 years, the Republicans, if they take power in the House, in the Senate, and possibly the White House in 24, all that gets undone, and then we go back to just the enormous number of wasted votes on repeal and then no replacement, because I think we learned during the Trump years that they don't really have a replacement. They have no plan, no idea, no direction, other than they know they don't like that Obama thing.
Exactly. That there's still no Republican health care plan. And yes, if they regain power, we would see in 3 years it would expire. However, we have this election coming up, and so we can do something about it because we don't have to let them take power. We can make it so that we have 50 Democratic senators in the U.S. Senate that are willing to vote for change. We're a couple votes shy of breaking the filibuster this last time, which is why they weren't able to fix to guarantee our right to an abortion, and they weren't able to make these healthcare changes permanent. But if we get a couple more votes, including in places like Pennsylvania, I think we can get there.
No, it's something I'm hoping the working class of this country is waking up to. But I'm going to push back on your thought, because and I kind of said it too, that the Republicans don't have a plan. They actually do have a health care plan. It's on. You can actually put it on a bumper sticker, since they're really good at bumper sticker sloganeering. It's simply pay or die. That's their healthcare plan. If you have the wealth and you have the ability to pay, you're going to get the best treatment in the world. If you're like the rest of us who, don't, decrease the surplus population.
And part of their attacks on our healthcare, we saw a ruling just a few days ago from the same Texas judge that ruled the Affordable Care Act was unconstitutional. He's at it again, and he ruled that the preventative services piece of the Affordable Care Act is unconstitutional. So things that we take for granted now that we get for free with, free vaccines and so on, that is under threat. Now, this is just a circuit court ruling. It's going to go to appeals, and this is by no means done. Right. But this just shows that these conservatives are not done attacking our healthcare.
No, and it shows that, again, I keep coming back to this frame: elections matter. If we make the wrong choice again, and you end up with a Trump or a Trumpite in the White House, or in a J.D. Vance or a Dr. Oz. Oh, geez. Dr. Oz and his, hey, we should have healthcare festivals for people who don't have insurance. You can go to the field and have someone look at you for 13 seconds. That's healthcare in their world. But, if we make the wrong choice this November and in 2024, maybe healthcare festivals are the best we're going to get.
I remember before the Affordable Care Act, I remember, and I believe even still today, there are charity agencies that offer healthcare around the world, and they do days of healthcare here in the U.S. that thousands of people would show up to be able to see a doctor because they couldn't afford anything else.
Have you seen the photographs from Appalachia? You go down into parts of Virginia, parts of West Virginia, where they would do this. It looks like a third world country where they come and they put up tents and you go, this is the healthcare system that well, this is what we do to poor people. This could never happen in rich affluent areas, where DeSantis and Abbott and those folks who keep trying to shove this stuff down our throats. You won't find this near the Golden Palace at Mar-a-Lago. But in places where working people live, this is what we get.
And you can see right now with the numbers that just came out on the number of uninsured, I think it was the best was Massachusetts with 2%. And then you see Texas with, I think it was more like 15% or more of their folks are uninsured. And that's when you have situations where people can't get health care. And in Texas in particular, it goes right back to Governor Abbott and the Texas Republican legislature that refuses to expand Medicaid for low-income working people. That people who make too much money to get the Affordable Care Act, too little money to get Medicaid, they can't get help. And that is the responsibility of the Texas legislature and governor.
You listen to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Laura Packard, Executive Director of Healthcare Voter. Their website, healthcarevoter.org. You can also see Laura on her weekly ACT TV program, Care Talk. We'll get links out on how you can take a look at that as well. Now, here's the weird thing. You said, they're 15% in Texas, 2% only in Massachusetts. The frame that I keep hearing from people, especially conservatives, is all those uninsured people, that's their choice. They don't want to be insured because if they wanted to be insured, they would get jobs that had health insurance. It sounds ludicrous, but I get that from conservatives all the time. And the frame being, I did it, they should do it too. So I'm kind of curious your response to that.
Well, first of all, if you're sick, it is extremely hard to hold down a 40-hour-a-week job that provides insurance. And second, so many of the people that we used to call essential workers don't even have health care. The people that, provide you your food, take care of your kids, hardworking Americans don't have health care in their low-paying jobs. And so are they really essential? Are we treating them like essential workers? No, we are not.
Now we give them a nice little title pat on the back, but no raise, no health insurance, no security, none of that. Hey, it's the new American way. We're going back to the old days. It's the old new American way, where a company, an industry like the rail industry who makes hundreds of millions of dollars in profits, coming out and saying, labor didn't do any of this. Labor didn't do anything to help us make skyrocketing profits, Laura.
Well, I'm hoping that the workers, the rail workers, finally get a day off. I think it's unconscionable that they're basically on call forever. This wasn't just about money; it was about paid time off. And we still haven't fixed paid family and medical leave in this country, but it just goes to show you can be a hardworking American with a good job and still not get good benefits.
No, I look at someone like you, a stage 4 cancer survivor. Nobody puts in their plan, I'm going to get stage 4 cancer. Nobody puts in their plan the health things that come and the fights that you're going to end up with. And, your story is one of the, I've heard sadly replicated, hundreds of times from people who said, look, I had the American dream. We lived in a little picket house fence. We were making good money. We were taking vacations, planning for college. We were doing all the things we were told we were supposed to. Somebody got sick. Bang, we're bankrupt.
Exactly. We live in a country, in one of the only industrialized countries, where healthcare is not guaranteed to us. And if you are too sick to work, you also probably lose your health insurance.
No, I think back to a guy when we used to do these hungry and homeless for the holiday food events, where we would sleep out in a grocery store parking lot for a week. And I remember a guy we met, that's what was his life. In fact, he was a conservative his entire life. He had a heart attack. Had some complications, ended up losing his job a couple months later, ended up losing his health care, didn't have any money, couldn't get Social Security, disability, ended up homeless Now, because of Medicaid, we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to keep him alive, only to send him back to the street. And you go, there's something wrong with this system. And it's so badly broken that I think the average American goes, what can we do? So the question then, what can we do? Is this high on the priorities in this election cycle, or is it something else?
Well, I think that healthcare is on everybody's minds. I mean, we're coming out of a pandemic that killed so many of our friends and neighbors and family members, and we are making drugs more affordable. But this bill helps people on Medicare. It doesn't help people that aren't on Medicare with prescription drugs. And that's something, there's a $35 copay on insulin for people on Medicare, but Republicans chose to strip it out for everybody else.
Yeah, how do you do that? How do you go, sorry, you're going to pay hundreds of dollars a month? And I think the governor of California is doing the right thing. The idea that the state of California is going to start making insulin and selling it at cost. If the private sector isn't going to be helpful, the public sector has to step in and do what we the people need. That's always been my mantra.
Mm-hmm. And there is talk that there may be a vote in Congress on a standalone bill to do something about insulin. And that's great. But it's so important that you vote for senators that'll vote for that. But also, we can't be just piecemeal fixing one drug at a time. We need comprehensive reform for all the pieces of our healthcare system.
What good is cheaper insulin if you can't get to the doctor to get it and get the follow-up care that you need to make sure that, my wife was just telling me about a friend who, just going through life, taking care of others, doing other stuff, finds out she's got diabetes, ends up losing a toe. And you go, that's not good. How'd that happen? Well, 8 months to get a doctor appointment, which is insane. Now, again, my conservative friends tell me, and I'm sure you've heard this, if we go to that hippie liberal social media that you want, or social medicine you want, we'll never get a doctor appointment. I go, have you tried getting a doctor appointment on short term in this day and age? It ain't easy.
And also, for some reason, people in Canada and the UK and any other country doesn't seem to want to give up their healthcare system for ours. But I think that we need to properly fund and make it healthcare available for everybody. And we also need to have more doctors, more medical personnel, because as baby boomers retire, there are increasing shortages of doctors and nurses and all kinds of medical professionals.
So last question I've got for you, because election's coming up, and I have people, especially my women friends. The women folk are looking at the November election or the Rovember election cycle as all about choice and reproductive rights and all of that. How big do you expect this to be? I mean, there's states like here in my state of Pennsylvania where they're going, that could be the issue that swings this entire election. Same thing with Ohio. Curious your thoughts.
Well, I think abortion affects everybody, and it isn't always something that you necessarily plan for, just like I wasn't expecting to get cancer. And there's stories coming out, actually. I think there was a cancer patient in Ohio that couldn't get chemotherapy because it could possibly harm a fetus. So this person has just been diagnosed with cancer, needs chemotherapy, and then has to figure out how to get to another state to get an abortion so they can get the medicine they need. And there are so many stories like these. Women with ectopic pregnancies, that it will kill them if they don't get an abortion, and they still can't get care. So it goes on and on.
It's God's will, Laura. God's will. It's God's will. Isn't that what they tell us? I mean, if you listen to the extremists, like, the guy who's running for governor in Pennsylvania here, this Doug Mastriano, under no circumstances can we allow to have any of that happening.
Well, I think if you believe that, didn't God give us a brain and help us develop medicine for a reason?
Well, not women. We don't want you women folk thinking, because if you listen to that video that I played yesterday on the program that Mastriano tweeted out, that the feminists, they want women back, they want women to be equal and get jobs and pay taxes, whereas your natural nurturing instinct should be home in the kitchen making your man pie.
Well, one of the issues with that is there was a woman in Texas that had an ectopic pregnancy and couldn't get care, and I believe ended up having a hysterectomy. So no more babies for that family because of Texas's backwards abortion ban.
Well, I'm hoping it is going to be Rovember and we start throwing some of these bums out and maybe cleanse ourselves of the insanity that has propped up in the Republicans. And look, my Republican friends, take your party back. I'm not saying all the way to the sane line, just somewhere near, somewhere in the ballpark of sane. That's all I'm asking for. Is that too much? Yeah, probably. But Laura, I appreciate the time. As always, great stuff.
Thanks.
Our good friend Laura Packard. Make sure you check out the work that she does over at Healthcare Voter, healthcarevoter.org. Make sure you also check out her ACT TV program, Care Talk. Gonna take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. Where working people come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 2004. That was not a good day for hockey fans. The National Hockey League owners locked out the players. The owners and the players' union could not come to an agreement on issues including pay, free agency rules, and drug testing. League owners also wanted to implement a salary cap. The Players Association objected. The first game of the season was supposed to take place on October 13th. But across the country, the arenas stood silent. As the impasse dragged on, in February, the league announced the season was canceled. The Associated Press reported, quote, "A hockey season on the brink is now a season gone bust." The NHL canceled what was left of its decimated schedule Wednesday after a round of last gasp negotiations failed to resolve differences over a salary cap, the flashpoint issue that led to a lockout. The article continued, quote, "No Stanley Cup champion will be crowned. The first time that's happened since 1919, when the 2-year-old league called off the finals because of a flu epidemic. It was the first time that a North American professional sports league lost a full season to a labor dispute. Some of the players found work in the European leagues at greatly reduced pay. It's estimated that the league lost $2 billion in the lockout and that players lost $1 billion in salaries. The impact of the lockout rippled throughout restaurants and other businesses that relied on the hockey crowds, causing layoffs for waitstaff. Finally, in July, an agreement was reached. The players gave in to the owner's demand for a salary cap. In 2012, another lockout by management cost NHL players another half of the season. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
So I got an email from a railroad worker who points out that, I might be right. He's saying that the California railroad workers, he doesn't think they're going to be in favor of this, and it might not get signed. And this is where democracy in the workplace matters. The unions have said, hey, this is something that we think we can get passed, we think we can get ratified, but ultimately it's going to come down to the members voting. But he says, look, the railroad manufactured this shortage of people working because of this precision scale railroading that we had talked about, or precision scheduling railroading that they had talked about the other day on the program. And this, again, he said the shortage is critical. They're at a critical moment where, they don't have enough people. They're working the people who are there to death. And as he points out, between this scheme that they came up with, these draconian work rules that the company put into place, and COVID, He said, look, this is a terrible mixture. It's caused even more of a shortage than what you would have need. He also goes on to saying the training that they are providing is half of what it used to be, and it's creating unsafe working conditions as well as numerous incidents that cost millions. And again, this goes back to what I've said before. If companies really want to do well, they should want to retain people. They should want people to stay on the job, the best qualified people. And this is why union companies do generally so much better. In fact, I talk about the freight industry where I came out of, the company I worked for years. They used to brag about the fact that they had a less than 2% turnover rating. Whereas other companies, you were having, 30, 40% turnover. The people who worked for that company, they knew the job. They were efficient at it. They were productive, and there was stability. And that's why, because, better wages, hours, conditions being a big part of this. And this is where, I'm struggling with how things have gotten so bad. He points out that the self-induced management shortage has some guys' phones ringing a dozen times every night. Now, as someone who has been on, who's been on call in the past and understands what these guys are going through, only to the fact that I had weekends. This is insanity. The fact that you might not even be off your rest yet, and it's crazy. Now he says this new verbal agreement seems to address the quality of life grievances with a few sick days per year, not even enough to get your teeth cleaned 3 or 4 days. Now that's a huge improvement over none, but you got to question. How is it that an industry that it's this profitable, that could pay their CEOs so much money, how is it that they can't not set up a system of scheduling that's going to give you the opportunity to, I don't know, like this email points out, just going to get your teeth cleaned? How is it that you can't have a system where people can plan to go, I don't know, to a wedding that your kid may be having down the road, maybe your own, who knows? But again, it's because these railroads have gotten so consolidated and so much power. He finishes up by saying, again, precision scheduled railroading was meant to do more work with less manpower, less maintenance, less safety rules, all to maximize profit. And that's not just the railroad industry, that's across corporate America. He says that my biggest fear is that the railroads pay the same money in Arkansas that does in California. This contract is substantial in the compensation areas. Without a COLA for pay, the California workers get the same as others across the country. Just like the rest of America, we are pitted against each other from the top. And this is, again, it's the system that they've created to keep us fighting with each other. Now, I haven't seen the entire agreement. I've seen bullet points. I've heard from folks, like my railroad guy here. If I'm voting, I don't know that I'm voting for it. In this moment, with the leverage that the workers have and the sentiment across the country of workers being able to come out and strike and a movement back towards that, I don't know that I vote for it. Because I think I want more of my life back. I want to fight for more of my life. And look, I've heard the stories before that, in the middle of your rest, the phone is ringing to get you back, to keep you running, because they are that short. I remember, being on call myself, when the phone rings every 8 hours, 8 for 10. You got to be in here 8 for 10. And hour back and forth to work, 5 minutes to take a shower, to eat, to say hello to your children. That doesn't even exist. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. I don't think this is over, but there's a movement to go in the right direction. And what I do know, here's what I do know from my union brothers and sisters. I do know if Donald Trump were in the White House and Republicans controlled the Senate, I do know we wouldn't even be talking about this. They would impose their will on those workers and force them back. Probably even send out the National Guard after them. Just my thoughts. Love to hear yours. If you miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast wherever you find yours. you'll find ours.
There is nothing natural about the new scale of these disasters. They are the price of humanity's fossil fuel addiction.
New UN report warns world is heading into uncharted climate territory. August 2022 was the second hottest August ever recorded. Plus,
look, folks, the Great American Road Trip is going to be fully electrified. Charging stations will be up and easy to find as gas stations are now.
President Biden touts historic climate bill and national EV charging network.
If you say so, all of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
The current fossil fuel free-for-all must end now.
Yes, we must end the current fossil fuel free-for-all. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, great news. The Earth is cooling. August wasn't that hot after all.
That would not be the way that scientists would recommend looking at the new record that NASA announced this week.
Oh, okay.
NASA announced that August 2022 was the second hottest August on record globally.
See, it's the second. Everything is getting better.
Since record keeping began in the mid-1800s, and in the wake of historic extreme heat waves across the entire northern hemisphere, NASA also confirmed that this was the hottest summer ever recorded globally in history, despite an ongoing La Nina event cooling the Pacific Ocean.
Okay, that's bad.
The UN's World Meteorological Organization has released its annual climate report in advance of the UN General Assembly in New York. The United in Science report warns that, quote, humanity's chances of avoiding the worst ravages of climate breakdown are diminishing rapidly because governments and corporations are failing to cut emissions fast enough. The new report confirms that extreme weather disasters are growing in frequency and intensity. There are now 5 times more weather-related disasters than 50 years ago. And climate-related disasters are causing $200 million in economic losses on average every day. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres cited this year's record-shattering heat waves and the biblical floods in Pakistan in sounding the alarm again.
This year's United in Science report shows climate impacts heading into uncharted territories of destruction. We are way off track. Climate action is stalling on key fronts, and the poorest countries and people are being hardest hit. But no country is immune.
Wow, sounds like a troubling report. I'm sure the Globe can't wait to not read it.
The report comes on the heels of a different study finding that the world is close to triggering 4 critical tipping points in the climate system and warns that if the world passes the threshold of 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming above pre-industrial levels, those tipping points will unleash more rapid and, in some cases, irreversible shifts in critical ecosystems. Unfortunately, Axios reports that coal use is surging. The global energy crisis caused by Russia's invasion of Ukraine and a global drought curtailing hydroelectric power has forced power providers worldwide to boost consumption of dirty, emissions-intensive coal to meet electricity demand despite the damage to climate.
Good God.
But some good news, a fast transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy is not only feasible, but with the right investments will be way cheaper than maintaining current levels of fossil fuel use because of the falling cost of renewables. How much cheaper? $12 trillion cheaper by 2050,
Really?
according to a new analysis by Oxford University.
Wow, well, that's $12 trillion less the fossil fuel companies are going to receive.
The researchers slammed critics who falsely claimed that a fast transition to clean energy is expensive. They say the faster the switch, the more money it saves. At the White House this week, President Biden and Democrats celebrated passage of the biggest climate bill in U.S. history, the Inflation Reduction Act, which invests $370 billion over 10 years in climate resilience and adaptation and shifting the nation to clean energy. And Biden also noted that all Republicans voted against the law.
This year, the American people won. The climate deniers lost.
And on Wednesday in Michigan, Biden announced that funding for the first ever national electric vehicle charging network has been approved for 35 states to begin construction.
35 states. What about the other 15?
And you can help your town fight climate change. NOAA has announced a new first-of-its-kind tool to help communities assess their exposure risk to different climate hazards like drought, heat, fires, and floods, and helps them access funding for climate resilience projects. You can find the Climate Mapping for Resilience and Adaptation portal at resilience.climate.gov.
For much more on that story and all of the other ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So our tweet of the day comes from Mike Pompeo. Pompeo tweets out, President Biden seems more outraged with a few dozen illegal immigrants in liberal cities than with policies that caused the crisis in the first place. And you go, what crisis is that? The one that you guys didn't really do anything about either, or we haven't done in decades. The globalization that's causing, mass pain and suffering across the globe, or the fact that, energy prices are going through the roof because you and the Trump administration helped make sure that the Saudis controlled one of the largest oil refineries in the U.S. Which is that? Which part did you play, Mike? Yeah, I know. Let's not get into details. Let's just throw out barbs. That's one of those people in glass houses should probably shut up. I wanted to go the full Monty, but terrestrial radio. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on, where we are. I got to get some thoughts on this stunt by DeSantis. I've asked our good friend, former Ohio Congressman and political analyst, Bob Ney, to come share some thoughts. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
No, thank you, Rick.
So what do you make of this? I mean, I know a lot of my liberal friends are outraged. Oh, my gosh, how could you be so cruel? I gotta be honest. My belief is the cruelty is the point. It's the reason that they're doing it, and this is going to make the base of your former party all very happy. At least the people that I've met so far, they're all tingly in the panties.
Well, it's going to be okay for Senator Blackburn in Tennessee. She was attacked for something, and she attacked back. I can't remember what it was, but anyway, it doesn't hurt her down there. DeSantis is not going to be hurt by this, and the base, Abbott in Texas, and for the reason that they're saying, well, look, okay, you are a sanctuary city. You all said you want to be cool about this, so it's all on our backs in these border states. So here you go. And I think, of course, frankly, Martha's Vineyards handled it better than New York City did. New York City, the mayor, just kind of went, off about it. Whereas at Martha's Vineyards, churches got together, people got together, and then the governor took the people to a military base where they're going to try to assimilate them, into areas in Massachusetts. But it's not going to be something that is going to, hurt them in particular. Now, overall, there are some points to this entire thing, the entire process and how these governors are reacting and, the other cities, et cetera. And, of course, the point is, for years, decades, nobody has come together to do something about the entire situation at the border.
Yep.
And there's multiple steps to do that. I will tell you, Rick, I was in private meetings with the Republicans at the time. George Bush had proposed some ideas, and when the doors were shut and those ideas were discussed, people weren't in the meeting, House Republicans, people went crazy. He's weak. He's giving them all asylum. He's doing things like Reagan did and blah, 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 and on and on and on. Jimmy Carter. All these names were evoked. And there was an opportunity back then to do a couple of things. And again, it's a complicated scenario. There are things you can do which include a lot of different things. DACA, amnesty, also border security, new policies at the border from day one. There's all these types of things that they're never done. This is hit again, hit and miss, and on and on. And that's why you're seeing Abbott and DeSantis doing this. And again, with their base, it's not going to hurt them. And that's why they're doing it.
See, here's my problem with this, and I agree with you 100%. My problem is I look at this from DeSantis and Abbott. It's not even about the policy. It's not about coming up and saying, hey, we need to address this. This is about scoring political points, in my view. This has nothing to do with policy, because you'd go, okay, here's the policy that we want to see. Here's what we want to do. This just seems to be, maybe I'm wrong, but this just seems to be about the cruelty and the attention that they get from it.
Well, also, right, and of course, as they're saying, people said on Facebook today, the Obamas have a mansion there; they can take people in. That's what was said. They have a house at Martha Vineyards, I guess. And then, of course, people said, okay, let Vice President Harris take people in. She doesn't like it. Drop them at her doorstep. Put them around Nancy Pelosi's house. So, yeah, the quote cuteness aspect of this, putting aside human trauma. But the, quote, cuteness aspect, okay, you guys don't want to do anything about it. Here you go. They're in your backyard. What do you want to do? And it's not that Kamala Harris or Barack Obama doesn't want to do anything about it. It's the fact that people haven't done anything about it in the system forever.
Yep. Now, one of the things I talked about back in 2010, and this has been one of those things that, my Tea Party friends at the time were, we got to cut, foreign aid, and we got to do all this stuff. And I'm going, I don't know that I'm comfortable with doing that. I mean, the amount of money we gave out in foreign aid was very small, but I always saw it as kind of a way to try and make places better where people would want to stay. Maybe I'm off here, but I think you try and make places better, politically, economically, whatever, so that people aren't making the dangerous trek, aren't doing the things that we've seen such horrible stories over to get here, only to be treated like this and used as a political pawn. It seems to me that it's a massive, comprehensive plan that I don't know that we're anywhere close to ever being able to deal with. So this seems to me like a never-ending crisis that's going to just be this kind of one-upsmanship and showmanship and stunts and schemes to gain attention.
Well, it is. Back in 1994, I was in Perry County. I can remember, the county I was in, Perry, in a small town, Somerset. And there was a debate down there, sort of, one of these meet and greets, campaign. And I had an opponent point to me and said, he went to Israel. He went to Israel. And he's pointing at me. And I'm like, yeah, I did.
Okay.
I didn't know it was North Korea. I thought it was Israel, free democracy. Anyway, they're down in a rural county, and some people are like, why did you go to Israel? And see, this stuff sort of plays. And then when you get elected, you have to communicate to your constituency, because they'll say, what are you giving any money to any country for? Well, we're federal legislators, not just our area, but we're federal legislators. And if you take, for example, Israel, and the Palestinians, if you want to do something to try to have a two-state solution, if you want to do something over there, you can't ignore Palestinians or the economic plight of Palestinians, and you're not giving money to the terrorist organization. You try to separate that, but you try to give some type of aid so that the Palestinians have something to hang on to versus saying, I have nothing, I'm going to go do things to people.
No, this is
it's that simple.
No, and that's an excellent point. It ties into a lot of my thinking of what's happened in this country. The radicalization of the working class is directly tied to the economic system that hasn't served them. So you look at places in the Middle East where people are willing to strap bombs on their chest and walk in and do desperate things. It's because one, they've got nothing anyway, but they've been told that this is the way forward, that this is the right thing to do. It's what's going to make a difference and make their lives better, or at least make their children's lives better. And you get people doing desperate and what most of us will look at as insane things. But this is what happens when you have this kind of an economic system that really punishes people.
Well, you mentioned a point here about the economics, and if you just look at the potential rail strike that was averted, and that issue that jumps out at you is the 24/7 on call. You don't have a life anymore, worker.
Yep. No, look, I did it for 11
railroad
years.
People make good money, but 24/7 for how long now?
Yep.
You don't have a life.
No, and look, I mean, my wife will be the first one to tell you, I lived through it for 11 years. I was on call like that as well, 2-hour work call, 2 o'clock in the morning, the phone rings, be here at 4. But the difference between what I went through and what these guys are going through is, after so many, trips, you work 6 trips, you got a 48-hour weekend, you work 7 trips, you got a 56, you worked 11, you got a 72. You could plan things, you could have days off. There was some time,
Right.
occasionally you could take a slide. Hey, I need an extra couple hours to cut the grass. There was some give and take. There's none of that here, and that's kind of the difference.
Right, and so again, it's all about empowering people, changing their lives. Whether it's we talked about the Palestinians, poor people in third world countries, so that they have more to hang on to back there than trying to just simply come here. And on top of it, our own working conditions to have a better improvement on site, which you have a happier employee, which kind of translates into a better ability with the workforce, if that's the case. If it's not the case, then you have a workforce that feels pretty well trumped on.
Yeah, I mean, and this is kind of the premise of the tour that we're going on through the month of October. Talk about this stuff and how rural communities and working class communities have been left behind, and why we're seeing the kind of radicalization that we're seeing. And again, it's tied to the economic system and the division that keeps us apart and at each other's throats. I mean, yesterday was the 59th anniversary of the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing, and you go, what makes people have that kind of hatred that they would do something like that? I fear the kind of the kind of pitting of each other against each other. I fear we're going to relive those bad days.
Right, and then the quality of life, and you're right, people that do feel that they have been left behind and they have no particular type of hope here, in our own country, which shouldn't be that way. I was sitting having a cup of coffee today, listening to 2 seniors. I'm a senior, so as a matter of disclosure, but I'm listening to 2 ladies. And they're talking about how how are they going to make it, and then they were talking about their kids and their grandkids, and how they're having it just rough trying to make it, and they're out working.
Yep.
These people are, but it's just becoming so difficult to be able to and a lot of it not having health care, but yet you may not qualify for the exchange.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's insane.
Not every job provides health care. I try to tell people that all the time.
Yeah, it's insane that we have a system that's created this environment. It's insane. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show with Bob Ney, former Ohio congressman, political analyst. I want to change topics, get your thoughts on what's coming out of Ukraine. Evidently a mass grave, 440 men, women, and children they have found. Again, the cruelty is the point. Thoughts?
Well, they found this mass burial site, and I think it's Izium, and they also said from the analysis of the bodies that were there that it provides signs of torture, and the brutality of Putin, the nonstop brutality. Although I must say, the Ukrainians have been absolutely amazing. I mean, I think we gave another round of money yesterday, and of course NATO stepping in, but their resilience is amazing, but we're only now finding out things like these mass graves and the tortures and the shootings and the killings and the murders and the rape that have been done because Putin has no boundary, none. And at home, he's convinced people that, except a couple oligarchs that got thrown out of the hospital rooms, but he's convinced people that this is him saving them from the horrible West.
Yeah, the lesson here, and maybe one that we should learn, is when people invade another person's country, the people being invaded are going to fight. It'd be like here, if someone invaded our country, I think everyone would throw in and fight to the death. It kind of, I think that frame should be here.
Right, and the Ukrainians have been so brave about it, and I think Putin thought he could just go in and do it. But again, he has no boundaries. And you look at it, and it's something that if the United Nations just, of course, they're on the Security Council, Russia is, but there ought to be a way the United Nations just goes in force and total condemnation of Russia, going after them. But Putin knows what so far he can get away with.
Yeah, it's sad. And the weird thing is we've got a major political party in this country that, well, not that they're all on board with Putin, what's going on, but they're kind of silent.
Well, I mean, a couple have been on it. Look at the comment of J.D. Vance, the Republican candidate in Ohio. Remember about the Ukraine? His comments weren't complimentary. He's like, it wasn't that important. The whole deal. Really?
But again, we're a Christian nation.
Mm-hmm. With a lot of compassion. At least in the verbiage.
Yeah, I mean, can you believe we're in this moment? I mean, when someone like Vance is potentially going to be sitting in the Senate, I know it's a close race. I've seen polling between 1 and 4 points that Vance is up, which means easily, Tim Ryan is in with striking distance, and we still don't know what the fallout from the Roe decision is going to be. As women across this country are registering like never before. This could be a blowout landslide, or it could be a close race. But can you believe it's this close?
I mean, in any other time, if you look at Tim Ryan, the candidate who's been consistent about working people, one of the best candidates, I think, in America, Tim Ryan is speaking about the issues of working people, caring about the issues, of working people. And he has managed to do better than most Democrats could do. This used to be a state that, was different in the makeup, although we do have Sherrod Brown, so we do have a Democrat senator, and we had Portman, a Republican, but J.D. Vance is the Trump-picked candidate that, Trump came in and wiped out the existing Republicans that probably would have been running. But J.D. Vance, he wrote Hillbilly Elegy, I'm from Appalachia, but beyond that book he wrote, he was with Thiel, the billionaire, Silicon Valley people, the wealthy crowd, and his campaign has been absolutely in the abyss. In fact, they were putting him on the back of a milk carton almost to find out what he looked like in the state of Ohio until a couple weeks ago.
And that,
it shouldn't even be this close.
No, that's what I'm saying. It should
Tim
not
Ryan
even be this close.
should be 20 points up.
And that comes back to us. That comes back down to why are we so divided when the choices it would be so clear that there's one person who's going to fight for working class people and values, and the other guy maybe he shows up, maybe he doesn't.
If Vance is, and I tell this to people all the time that I know, and I know a lot of Republicans that obviously are going for Vance, or for Ryan, or he wouldn't be this close.
Right.
But it shouldn't be this close because Vance is a non-existent candidate. He doesn't really exist in this state. And it's just amazing. And if he's elected, he'll be a pretty suit that's a rich guy that's going to be taking, his photos and putting out Happy Day newsletters.
But more importantly, doing what he's supposed to do, and that's making the wealthy wealthier and the rest of us more desperate.
With Thiel, the billionaire.
Yep. Scary times. But, Bob, I appreciate the time. As always, great stuff, my friend.
Thank you, Rick.
Our good friend Bob Ney. Seriously, this is one of those moments where you go, how is it so close? But I look at my state of Pennsylvania. You've got, Dr. Oz here running, who from New Jersey, and not surprising. And this just broke. The guy who's running for governor, and I don't know what the Jersey connection is. But evidently, New Jersey must be an incubator for Senate and gubernatorial candidates here in Pennsylvania, because it turns out that not only does Dr. Oz reside in New Jersey, and I guess not voted in Turkey and in New Jersey, the gubernatorial candidate, Doug Mastriano, for nearly 28 years, voted in New Jersey up until July of 2021, when election officials basically purged his name from the voting rolls. Kind of an interesting little tidbit. He voted all the way up until 2010 in New Jersey. So interesting bit. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around.
If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, under the heading of Joe Biden did that, and good on Joe Biden, Thursday, the president signed an executive order boosting the regulatory committee's power to review and take action on foreign investment into our country. And it's always been insane to me that we allow media companies to be bought by Russians. Seems kind of weird that we would allow the North Koreans to lobby our government. Seems kind of weird to me that the Saudis own one of the largest refineries in the U.S. and then we complain about gas prices are so high. Seems interesting to me that we allow a lot of the purchasing of what I would argue are important things for national security to be owned by, the Russians, the Chinese, good on the list of people who aren't necessarily warm and fuzzy with us. Not saying enemies, but it's weird to me that we would it's weird to me that that we would have the Chinese making some of our technology, for instance, that we would take communications tools from the Chinese that, I've had experts tell me that they can hack into much more easily. TikTok for me is just kind of a weird thing that so many people have taken to it, given the fact that you give all your data to the Chinese Communist government. Oh no, but that's a private company. No, it's not. There's no such thing. So this executive order signed by Biden is going to look at blocking Chinese investment here in the U.S. And you go, but we need Chinese investment. Do we? Shouldn't we have U.S. investment? Shouldn't this be one of those things where, we own the factors of our production, that, domestic production, domestic consumption, we should be making the things that we need, with American labor, with American investment. I know you're just being nationalist, but this is where I agree with some of the saner conservatives and thinking that, maybe we should have an America first kind of policy when it comes to investment and policy. No, we need the Chinese money. Maybe that's a problem too. Especially when you're talking about critical infrastructure, when you're talking about things that, in a cyber war scenario could shut us down. The fact that we're willing to sell off our highways and our water supply and all of this stuff to foreign investment is strange to me. Now, I know, but Rick, we invest in foreign countries too and all that, and, investments cross border. And I understand the argument with nations that you're friendly with, that you have alliances with. I'm struggling with the ones that are trying to, destroy you. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm a bit on the paranoid side. But it seems to me maybe we should be something we should be talking about. Just my thought. I would love to hear yours. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any of the program, make sure you download the podcast from iTunes to iHeart, Stitcher to Podbean, everywhere in between. That's where we'll be found. Quick break. Right back after this.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 2004. That was not a good day for hockey fans. The National Hockey League owners locked out the players. The owners and the players' union could not come to an agreement on issues including pay, free agency rules, and drug testing. League owners also wanted to implement a salary cap. The Players Association objected. The first game of the season was supposed to take place on October 13th. But across the country, the arenas stood silent. As the impasse dragged on, in February, the league announced the season was canceled. The Associated Press reported, quote, "A hockey season on the brink is now a season gone bust." The NHL canceled what was left of its decimated schedule Wednesday after a round of last gasp negotiations failed to resolve differences over a salary cap, the flashpoint issue that led to a lockout. The article continued, quote, "No Stanley Cup champion will be crowned. The first time that's happened since 1919, when the 2-year-old league called off the finals because of a flu epidemic. It was the first time that a North American professional sports league lost a full season to a labor dispute. Some of the players found work in the European leagues at greatly reduced pay. It's estimated that the league lost $2 billion in the lockout and that players lost $1 billion in salaries. The impact of the lockout rippled throughout restaurants and other businesses that relied on the hockey crowds, causing layoffs for waitstaff. Finally, in July, an agreement was reached. The players gave in to the owner's demand for a salary cap. In 2012, another lockout by management cost NHL players another half of the season. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter @laborhistoryin2.
For generations, workers have been punished by corporate bosses for watching the clock. But now, the corporate clock is watching workers, called digital productivity monitoring. This surveillance is done by an integrated computer system including a real-time clock, camera, keyboard tracker, and algorithms to provide a second-by-second record of what each employee is doing. Jeff Bezos, boss of Amazon, pioneered use of this ticking electronic eye in his monstrous warehouses, forcing hapless, low-paid pickers to sprint down cavernous stacks of consumer stuff to fill online orders pronto. Beat the clock or be fired. Terrific policy, exclaimed taskmasters at hospital chains, banks, tech giants, newspapers, colleges, and other outfits employing millions of mid-level professionals. So they've been installing these unblinking digital snoops to watch their employees, even timing their bathroom breaks and constantly eyeing each one's pace of work. They've plugged in new software with such Orwellian names as WorkSmart and Time Doctor to count workers' keystrokes and to snap pictures every 10 minutes of workers' faces and screens, recording all on digital scoreboards. You are paid only for the minutes the computers, quote, see you in action. Bosses hail the electronic minders as Fitbits of productivity, spurring workers to keep noses to the grindstone and also to instill workplace honesty. Only the whole scheme is dishonest. No employee's worthiness can be measured in keystrokes and 10-minute snapshots. This is Jim Hightower saying employees call this digital management demoralizing, toxic, and just wrong. But corporate investors are pouring billions into it. Which group do you trust to shape America's workplace?
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So you may remember we had talked pretty extensively about the Fast Recovery Act out in California, and Governor Gavin Newsom, the governor there, signed it on Labor Day. Very fitting. But the question is, what's this going to mean for the fast food workers there in California who, some 550,000 of them now may have some footing under their shoes. There may be some chance to make those jobs better jobs, and folks to be able to lead reasonable lives. And here to share some thoughts on the signing of California's Fast Recovery Act, I've asked David Madeline to come talk with us. David is the strategic director of the American Worker Project at the Center for American Progress. AmericanProgress.org is their website. David, thanks for taking time for us.
Oh, my pleasure, Rick.
So this is kind of an interesting. I'm going to go in two frames. It's kind of a big deal that finally something's going to be done, but this is a real big change from how labor management relations in this country have been pursued in the past. So I'm curious. Let's start there. How big of a difference is this? How big of a change in this, and how big of a shift can this be?
I think this is one of the biggest labor bills in decades, many decades, and really has the potential to transform the fast food industry. And I think this model could transform other industries. So yeah, it's just a start, and is the bill perfect? There's some issues we can talk about, but really, I think this is such an important deal because it gives workers a seat at the table with their employers, and an ability to discuss and set standards across an entire industry. And we'll go into it, but this is really going to be key for handling industries like fast food, where it's so challenging to raise wages and improve working conditions through other methods.
But the traditional argument, David, is going to be, well, isn't this what unions are supposed to do? Isn't pursuing these kind of policies, doesn't this make labor unions obsolete?
Oh, no. Unions are behind the bill, and they are the sort of driving force here. Sadly, as you know, we have state preempt, the National Labor Relations Act, the federal labor law, preempts states from sort of directly supporting unions in lots of ways. So this is the kind of best a state can do to give workers and their representatives a seat at the table, which are likely to be unions. So unions a seat at the table to discuss working conditions with their employers, in this is cases both franchisees and franchisors, because you need both of those parties at the table. And then you also have the government regulators. And getting all of those to the table is, that is different than the traditional kind of collective bargaining and the ideal version of bargaining where it's, just the employer and the worker representative. But having the government there is legally necessary and also structurally necessary, because unions don't have enough power to bring the employers to the table.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at this and I'm going, this could be transformational, and hopefully it will be, because the stories we've heard over the last several years, since the Fight for 15 campaign has really brought this to the forefront, is you get people who are trying to eke out existence, trying to eke out lives on what is poverty and desperation wages. Under in the frame I get from people, well, these are just teenagers doing these jobs. These are first jobs. No, these are people who are trying to make a living. These should be respectable jobs, and I see this as a chance to maybe move that up.
Yeah, the sort of slang term for these jobs is McJobs, because sadly we've treated them as disposable and treated the workers there largely as disposable. The turnover rate, for example, in fast food is over 100%, meaning every year there's an entire new crew on average. Obviously, some people stay there for quite some time, and that's in part why many of these workers are well over 30 and have careers, have children, and this is their life and livelihood. And so this model will helps. It's not only about, it's about all the kinds of things that can make a good job, or many of the kinds of things. It's not just about wages, but it's also about safety, for example, and discrimination, and this sort of package of things that traditional labor, traditional like raising the minimum wage doesn't get at fully. It also empowers the workers, which is key, because in industries like fast food, wage theft is just rampant. And so you need this additional power and voice for the workers, otherwise, for them to be able to stand up for their rights and enforce them. Otherwise, legislatively raising standards makes very little difference, or makes not enough of a difference.
Yeah, I know. Ultimately, wages, hours, conditions being a huge part of this. As we're seeing, as people are coming out of the pandemic, a lot of the organizing that we're hearing and a lot of the reasons people are organizing is, poor treatment and how horrible people are being treated. Scheduling issues. Fast food is just ripe with scheduling abuses and the wage theft that you brought up. How this will deal with that, you think?
Yes, well, so like as I mentioned, it's not perfect. They had to weaken it so they can't actually deal with scheduling in this version. But yes, the other issues, the package of working conditions, especially safety. Safety is a big deal for fast food workers, like working alone at night in sort of unsafe conditions where they're subject to violence and things like that. Not only the traditional working challenges with deep fryers that are dangerous. So yes, this is a big deal about working conditions and wages. And when we think of, can this model work? So fast food, we've tried lots of different things. You raise the minimum wage. Okay, that does help. But again, I said, wage theft is rampant. Some studies show that 9 out of 10 fast food workers have had their rights violated. And so when you look, where does this model work? Where do fast food workers have good jobs? You look at places like Denmark. And actually, fast food workers there get $22 an hour. They get their schedules in advance. They have benefits. They have vacation days. All of the things that we think of a package as a good job, they have. And in part, they have sectoral bargaining. Yes, it's more traditional kind of bargaining directly with the unions and the broad employers in the industry, because unions have real power there in their structure. But this is the kind of analog to that has everyone at the table setting standards across the industry. And I'm just going to continue a little bit more, if I may.
No, please, because I think people need to understand what this is going to look like, because this is, in my view, a change from what labor people like me are used to. Getting the government involved, I think, is going to make some folks a little uncomfortable. So please feel free, explain what this is going to do and how it's going to look.
Yeah. So you think of a traditional collective labor union. Let's say they organized one particular franchise location, and they tried to, run the gauntlet of actually trying to form a union, which is very tough. Let's say they succeed, then they're trying to bargain collectively. Well, their little franchisee has very little ability to raise wages on its own. They have the franchise brand, the McDonald's, the Subways, et cetera, give them conditions where they have to have set prices on menu items. They pay a certain amount for all their goods that they have delivered. They have to have certain hours that they're open. They can't really change anything other than reduce the labor costs. So traditional kind of worksite collective bargaining is fraught in that condition. You have to find a way to raise standards across the entire industry so that all of the franchisees can compete on a level playing field, and they get their bosses, their employers really, to recognize that sort of the conditions are going to need to be different. And so you can have a way for the workers to do well and for the employers to have profits, because that's necessary. And then the government is kind of the ultimate backstop. So this discussion that will happen between workers and their employers, franchisees and franchisors, then the government is kind of putting the rubber stamp on it and saying, yes, this is the law for everyone in this sector. And that's necessary both legally because of the way our laws operate, but also because workers in this industry just don't have enough power on their own. Their union density is incredibly low. And so they need a way to sort of force the employers to the table.
Yeah, and the reason the union density is so low is it's the structure of the industry with having these franchisees and protecting the brands. Maybe this is a way to bring the brands back into it. And could you argue that eventually maybe we won't have so much homogenization? Maybe this will spur, local stuff again on a certain level?
Yeah, well, that would be a dream. I mean, we'll see about that, but yes, it brings the brands in and it creates a level playing field for then the franchisees to compete on. They then compete based on productivity and they're sort of all the kinds of things you might hope. Now, this model is a little bit new in the US. There's some history of it, so we can't, I can't predict exactly the small guys, but I will say in other countries that have similar kinds of models, oftentimes the small employers like this kind of a system because they don't have to be the HR guy. They don't have to be fighting with their employer. This is, okay, you know what? I'm starting a business and this is what I pay my workers and this is what I do because the standards are already set for them. And here's what I'm going to compete based on this new innovative idea I've got, or a better restaurant or a better product. So yes, I do think there is hope and potential for what you're describing.
Now, you're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're with David Madeline. He's the strategic director of the American Worker Project at the Center for American Progress. AmericanProgress.org is their website if you want to check that out. What it sounds like you're saying is what I've been saying for a very long time. I want competition based on quality, on service, on the good stuff, not on who's willing to cut their employees' throats for pennies. So it sounds like this could lead us in a way that's not just beneficial for the workers, but for consumers as well. Argument there?
Yeah, potentially, and employers too. And, because the model at some level is approaching what we had, for example, in the auto industry in the 50s, 60s, 70s, where the UAW negotiating a whole set of standards for the entire industry. They did it firm by firm, but it was basically the same contract that every Ford plant, every GM plant, every Chrysler plant had. The firms were very profitable. Employees got a share of that, and their wages continued to rise. And so this was in some ways, a virtuous cycle that built the middle class in the U.S. That is, it's a little bit of a reach to say that's exactly what's going to happen here in fast food, but it's the analogy, I think, is close enough that it is a system that can lead to good outcomes for workers and good outcomes for employers, and for the customers as well, because you're dealing with happy, satisfied employees delivering good products and good service.
Yeah, ultimately, it's this idea that workers should share in the profits and the wealth that their labor creates. But if you listen to the railroad executives, according to them, that their skyrocketing profits don't reflect any contributions by labor whatsoever. So there's this view in this country that that workers are just a negative on the balance sheet. They're tearing profits down. They're harming companies. David.
Yes. Well,
that
is the model in fast food, and you really hit on this earlier, where workers are seen as a cost to be reduced and to be squeezed out. And because the model there, as I mentioned, franchisees, the only thing they can control is their labor cost. Pretty much all their other costs are fixed. So to make a profit, they have to squeeze labor costs down, which leads to this race to the bottom, which is why you need a kind of solution like this that actually creates a level playing field and hopefully a race to the top.
Yeah, or at least raises the bottom up so that we don't go so deep into the barrel.
Yes.
Because look, I spent most of my working life under the National Master Freight Agreement. It was the trucking agreement, much like you talked about the UAW. For years that agreement covered the entire country and in hundreds of trucking companies that set those standards for everybody, so that you competed on the right things, on quality and service, instead of who could squeeze their employees the most. And from an employee's point of view, you could move from company to company and enjoy the same benefits, and in fact, healthcare and pensions, were portable within that system. So for me, this idea of industry-wide bargaining makes a lot of sense and can be really, really good for working people, especially with portability of benefits.
You are preaching to the choir on this one. Yes, it's the master freight agreements were really a model for many kinds of industries that that had lots of small guys too. There were lots of sort of smaller firms that you worked for those guys, and you still got the broad set of benefits that were negotiated, at a much higher level that covered everyone, no matter who you worked for. And this is in fast food an attempt to recreate something similar. Again, it's, the setting the standards across the entire industry, which is very similar, the bringing all the parties to the table, the workers, their unions, and the employers, The slight difference is that the government is sort of more formally at the table in a way it wasn't in the master freight agreement. But we also had a regulated industry. So in some ways, government was sort of at the not the direct bargaining table, but there was a little bit of government that sort of helped facilitate that kind of deal in the way the industry was regulated and standardized.
Yeah. So last question I've got for you, because we'll see how this plays out. I'm hopeful for these workers. I'm hoping that this benefits them and the franchisees as well. Do you see this moving across the country, or is this just one of those, that's California kind of things?
Oh, I think it's going to spread widely. There are already a handful of cities and states that have done similar things on a smaller scale. Like, for example, Seattle has a domestic worker standards board, a similar board, but just for domestic workers. Detroit passed a similar kind of policy. And then a handful of states have done it for a little bit smaller industries. I think California, big state and a big industry, this is really caught people's attention in a way those other policies hadn't, and will really lead to spread in a number of states. And fast food, it will happen, but I also imagine several other industries that are kind of similarly fissured might take up this model as well.
I'm all in favor of it. Let's see where this takes us. But David, I appreciate the time and the work. Look forward to talking to you again real soon.
Yeah, you got it. My pleasure to be on. Thanks for having me.
Good stuff. David Madeline, the Strategic Director of the American Worker Project there at the Center for American Progress. AmericanProgress.org, the website. Love to hear your thoughts. You think this is going to be a good thing? I do. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Wherever you get yours, you'll find ours. Quick break. Right back.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1920. At noon, a horse-drawn wagon containing 100 pounds of dynamite pulled up across the street from the J.P. Morgan Company on Wall Street in New York City. 500 pounds of cast iron slugs were packed in with the dynamite. A timer detonated at 12:01 p.m. The explosion destroyed the horse and wagon. Shrapnel from the explosion ripped through the air, killing 38 people and injuring hundreds more. The unknown driver of the wagon was believed to have escaped. Authorities blamed anarchists. Meanwhile, the company's workers who died in the attack were mostly young messengers, stenographers, clerks, and brokers. Most of the wounded suffered severe injuries. Just minutes after the blast, the president of the New York Stock Exchange suspended trading in order to prevent a panic. Since the target had been the J.P. Morgan Company, the New York State District Attorney suggested the bomb was planted by radical anti-capitalists. The Bureau of Investigation, the forerunner to the FBI, pursued the bombing for 3 years. They never found the culprit. In 1944, the FBI reopened the investigation and decided the bomb was the work of Italian anarchists. There was speculation that the bomb was planted by an Italian in retaliation for the executions of Sacco and Vanzetti. 3 days after the bombing, the New York Times reported, "It was said today at the Department of Justice that Attorney General Palmer would recommend in his annual report to Congress that drastic laws for dealing with anarchists and other disturbing elements be enacted. At the same time, he will ask for larger appropriations, which were denied in the past." Over the next 2 years, the Palmer raids arrested and deported many accused leftists. Not surprising, most of the accused and deported were the loudest voices for workers' rights and a united working class. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. So look, I'm looking at this Fast Recovery Act as a step in the right direction, something that while I would prefer, and this has always been my preference, I would prefer there be little government involvement in workers and employers coming to agreements. The problem is the fast food industry is so large and so expansive, you're always going to have someone who's going to drag everyone down. And look, you may have people who are these franchisees who want to do better. But I think the reality is that system is so controlled. I was watching one of these, one of those social media sites. I don't really know which one.
but they had like a little short video, and the guy was talking about, so you want to own a McDonald's, and he was going, okay, well, we're going to take this percentage for this and this percentage for this and that. And by the time he got down to the numbers, how much percentage did the franchisee, the guy who is running the franchise, how much are they actually putting in their pocket? And we don't talk an awful lot about that. It's the structure of the entire system that's a problem, because so much of the revenue that's created in that location is being sucked out by the overlords, if you will. So the brand is cashing in mightily, which is why franchise opportunities, as they throw out of this, are popping up all over the place, and everyone's trying to take their idea and get other people to buy into it. Because, well, you start a hot dog cart, for instance. One of my kids wanted to start a hot dog cart. They had an idea that, they could go to certain events and they could sell stuff. So we started looking into, food trucks and things that maybe they could, if that's what they wanted to do. And a lot of these franchise opportunities popped up where you buy, all of your stuff from them at a markup, of course. And that's how they make their profit. That's how they sit back. They've created this idea, and they get you to do their work for them. This is kind of what the brands have done. They do the marketing, and they do the, hey, go there and get hooked on this. And they're just a distribution network. Whereas most people I know, think, well, those are owned by the brand. They're not. They're owned by people who said, hey, I want to start a business, and this sounds like a good one. Until you get into the numbers. And this is where I think putting a floor under everyone's feet, and this is the point here, by putting a floor at the bottom of the barrel that's maybe a little higher than the bottom, so that the workers don't get crushed, and you have a system that everyone's playing by the same rules. So again, you're competing on the right stuff. Now, I remember when I started working in the freight business, most of the, like 85% of the less than truckload carriers, the LTL carriers, were unionized. 85% of the industry was making good wages with excellent health care benefits, retirement security, a grievance process, work rules, the idea that everyone's on the same plan, and that all of the companies were competing not on how badly they can treat their workers, but how they best managed their workers and how they best set up systems to meet customers' demands and needs and all that stuff. It was the right competition. Sadly, over these last 30 years, where it's gone as worker power has diminished, it's the low-hanging fruit. Cheating your workers out of wages, it's the low-hanging fruit, as I've been saying. It's easy. Look at the railroads. They're literally coming out and saying, the millions of dollars we put in our own pocket, the billions in profit, all the stock buybacks, all the stuff that we've cashed in on. That's not because of those workers. They didn't do anything for this. They're a negative. They cost us money. Not that they're the central focus of what you do. No, not that they're the ones out there day and night, rain and shine. Never mind that. Never mind reality. And as I said, it was the Buffett quote that I read earlier. We're making money the right way here. And you go, what is the right way? Oh yeah, cheating your workers out of wages. Creating a system in this country where instead of working to live, we actually live to work. That, my friends, that's the billionaire dream. Desperation, pliability, and, well, looking at each other and saying you don't deserve something. It's always been curious to me. I've said before, I don't pay out of my pocket for my health care. It's in our contract. It's part of our compensation package. It is what it is, but I don't actually reach into my pocket and pay for it. And I've had people tell me, well, you should have to pay for that. I have to pay for mine. And I go, why aren't you asking how it is that you shouldn't have to reach into your pocket and pay for it? When did we become that country that says, well, if you've got something, you shouldn't have it because I don't, instead of being the country that goes, hey, how'd you get that? You got, your union did that, huh? How about we join a union? Yeah. And we fight for those things, better wages, hours, conditions, better opportunities, better chances for our families, our kids. Yeah, I remember those days. It's been a long time. It's been a long time. Hopefully they're coming back. Hopefully. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you think it's possible, I want to know. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Wouldn't it be great? I'm sure there's a Beach Boy song for that. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Miss any portion of the program? Make sure you grab the podcast. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at Rick